The first time I noticed it was a Tuesday in March, and I remember because I'd stayed late trying to close out February before payroll ran. I work as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit in Seattle. We do transitional housing for women coming out of the system, mostly around Beacon Hill and the Rainier Valley. 9 staff, 1 office above a laundromat on Rainier Avenue, and a budget that never quite covers what we promise people. Except it did. It always did. I'd been there almost 4 years at that point, and every single quarter, right when we should have been eating into our reserves, a wire would come in. Not a round number, never a round number. It'd be something like $38,412.66. The exact amount, down to the cent, that would zero out our shortfall for the period. If a grant came in late, the wire came in later. If a donor bailed, the wire went up. If we underspent on outreach because a hire fell through, the wire went down. I want to be clear. I'm a bookkeeper. I look at numbers all day. Patterns are the job. And this wasn't a pattern I could ignore anymore. I brought it up first to Denise, our operations director, back in maybe 2019. She smiled the way people smile when they think you're being cute and said, "We have a generous friend somewhere. Don't chase gift horses." That was the whole conversation. She went back to her spreadsheet and I went back to mine, and I felt like I'd said something rude at a dinner party, but I couldn't let it go. So on my own time, at home, on my personal laptop, I started tracing. The wires came from a business bank in Delaware. That business was owned by a holding company in Wyoming. Wyoming led to a trust in Nevada. Nevada bounced to a limited partnership registered in the Isle of Man. From there, it went to a Cypriot LLC, then a Panamanian foundation, then 2 shells in Belize that I could never fully separate, then something in Luxembourg, then back to a different Delaware entity that wasn't the same as the first one. 10 layers. I counted them out loud one night in my kitchen because I didn't believe I was counting them right. Every layer had a different registered agent. Every agent was a service company that existed to be a wall. I called 2 of them. One woman told me, very politely, that they don't disclose beneficial ownership under any circumstances. The other one hung up when I got past the second sentence. That was when it stopped feeling generous and started feeling like something else. I don't know how to describe it exactly. It's the feeling you get when you're doing a puzzle and you realize the piece you're holding fits, but it fits in a way you don't like. The wires had started in February 2018. I looked back through our records. The month before, in January, our board had held a closed session about whether to shut the program down. Denise had cried in that meeting, according to notes I wasn't supposed to be reading. The very next month, the first wire came in, $47,209.13. Somebody had been in that meeting, or somebody knew what happened in that meeting. I started paying more attention to who came through the office. We got walk-ins sometimes, people asking about services, people dropping off donations of clothes or diapers. I began writing down descriptions of anyone who lingered, a man in his 60s who came in twice to ask about volunteering and never followed up, a woman who took a brochure and stood outside reading it for almost 20 minutes. A guy in a mariner's cap who asked what our biggest need was and then left without giving a card. None of them stood out. That was the problem. They all sort of blurred. In September, I did something stupid. I wrote a memo, a real one. 2 pages, single-spaced, laying out the routing, the timing correlation with our internal cash flow gaps, the fact that whoever was doing this had, at minimum, real-time access to our books. I printed 1 copy. I walked it into our executive director's office. His name was Paul. He'd been running the place since before I got there, and he read the whole thing without saying a word. When he finished, he folded it in half, then in half again, and slid it into his desk drawer. "I appreciate the work," he said. "I want you to stop." I asked him why. He looked at me for a long time, long enough that I started counting the ceiling tiles behind him. Then he said, "The women we serve don't care where the rent money comes from. They care that we're open on Monday, so we're going to be open on Monday. Are we clear?" I said we were clear. He said, "One more thing. Don't put anything like this on paper again." I didn't, but I didn't stop watching either. There's a bus stop across Rainier from our office. It's got one of those glass shelters that's mostly graffiti. From my desk, if I lean back, I can see it through the window over the copier. I started clocking who waited there. Regular commuters, obviously, kids after school, the usual foot traffic of a working street. But every once in a while, there'd be somebody who didn't get on a bus. Somebody who stood there while 3 buses came and went, and then walked off. I told myself I was imagining it. Bus stops are places people stand. That's the whole point. Then, last November, on a Wednesday, I went out for lunch. Rainier was crowded because there was a fire drill at the school up the block, and the sidewalk was full of kids and teachers. I was standing at the corner waiting for the light when I felt somebody watching me, not near me, across the street. I looked up. He was maybe 50, gray coat, no hat, thin, not tall. He was leaning against the wall of the laundromat under our office window, and he wasn't looking at the school kids or the traffic or his phone. He was looking at our door. And when the light changed and the crowd started moving, he turned his head very slowly and looked at me instead. I don't know why I didn't look away. I should have. Every bit of sense I had said keep walking, but I stopped in the middle of the crosswalk and I met his eyes and I held them because I wanted him to know I saw him. He smiled. It wasn't a mean smile. It wasn't a kind one either. It was the smile of somebody who'd been waiting for a hello and finally got one. He nodded once, like a small, polite thing you do to a neighbor, and then he pushed off the wall and walked south down Rainier and around the corner by the taqueria, and he was gone. I went back to the office and I sat at my desk for a long time before I opened anything. That was 4 months ago. I never saw him again. The wires still come in. Last quarter's landed on a Friday afternoon, $22,847.19, which was almost exactly what we needed after a state reimbursement got delayed. I still work there. I still reconcile the account every month. Paul retired in January. The new director is a woman named Alicia, and she seems good, and I haven't told her about any of it, and I'm not going to. I think about him more than I should. I think about how he looked at me like he already knew me. I think about the fact that whoever he is, whoever they are, they've kept 47 women off the street this year alone, and I've counted them because that's my job. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Some nights I decide one thing, some nights I decide the other. The call came in around 4:40 on a Tuesday, one of those gray December afternoons in Richmond where the sky just sits on top of you all day. Dispatch said it was a basement leak. Priority 2, address off Grove Avenue in the Museum District. Older neighborhood, big brick houses set back from the road, the kind of block where half the porches still had wreaths up from Thanksgiving. I'd been driving that van for about 6 years by then. Emergency plumbing, mostly nights and weekends. You get a feel for houses pretty quick in that job. You can tell within about 30 seconds of walking in whether someone actually has a leak or whether they just need company and made something up so their kid would visit later. The lady who answered the door was maybe 75, small, wearing a cardigan buttoned all the way to the top even though the house felt warm. She had that thin white hair women her age get, cut short and set, glasses on a chain. She smiled at me before I even got the clipboard out of the van. "Oh, thank the Lord," she said. "It's been dripping since lunchtime. I'll call her Mrs. Alden because that's close to what she said her name was, and it doesn't really matter now." She let me in. The house smelled like old carpet and something baked, sugar and butter, like she'd made cookies earlier. There was a wall clock ticking somewhere, nothing else. No TV going, no radio, no dog. I asked her if she lived alone, and she said yes. Her husband passed in 2018, and her son was up in Baltimore. I remember thinking, poor lady, Christmas alone. The basement door was off the kitchen. Regular wooden door, painted the same cream color as the walls, with an old brass knob. She opened it for me and pointed down. The lights at the bottom of the stairs, string pull, watch your head on the beam. I clicked on my flashlight and started down. The stairs were narrow and unfinished on the underside, just raw wood, and each step made this specific creak that old houses have. At the bottom, I found the string, and pulled it, and one bare bulb came on. Concrete floor, water heater in the corner, an old oil furnace, some plastic bins stacked against the wall with masking tape labels in shaky handwriting. Christmas, Easter, photos. The leak was easy to find. Pinhole in a copper supply line above the utility sink. Small puddle underneath, maybe the size of a dinner plate. Nothing serious. 10-minute job with a compression coupling, maybe 15 if I wanted to be neat about it. I set my bag down on the concrete and went to work. I could hear her walking around upstairs, slippers on hardwood, sink running for a second, then off. A cabinet closing. I had the water shut off at the main and was drying the pipe with a rag when I heard the basement door close. Not slam. Close, soft click. Then, about 2 seconds later, the sound of the deadbolt, that specific metal-on-metal slide. I hadn't even noticed there was a deadbolt on that door when I came down. It's not a normal thing to have on an interior door. I stopped what I was doing and stood there for a second, holding the rag. I called up. "Ma'am, everything all right up there?" "Nothing." I said it louder. "Mrs. Alden, did you lock the door?" The floorboards creaked. She was standing right on the other side of it. I could hear her breathing, or maybe I was imagining that part, but I could hear the weight of her, that soft shift of a person standing still on old wood. I went up the stairs, 3 at a time, tried the knob, locked, pushed my shoulder into it. Solid door, and whatever that deadbolt was, it wasn't cheap. Not budging. I knocked, not hard, just knuckles. "Ma'am, the door's locked. Can you open it up for me?" Nothing. I knocked harder. "Mrs. Alden? Hello? Ma'am, I need you to open the door." The floor on the other side creaked again. She was still standing there, not walking away, not answering, not doing anything, just standing. Honestly, my first thought wasn't fear. My first thought was that she was having some kind of episode. My grandmother had dementia at the end, and there were moments where she'd look right at me and not know what year it was. I figured maybe this lady got confused, forgot I was down there, locked up out of habit before bed, even though it was 5 in the afternoon, so I kept my voice friendly. I said, "Ma'am, it's the plumber. I'm still down here working on your pipe. Can you slide that lock back for me?" That's when she said something, very quiet, right through the door. She said, "You just stay down there a little bit, hun." That was it. Calm voice. Same voice she used at the front door. Not angry, not scared. The tone you'd use talking to a cat that got up on the counter. I stood on that top step, and I felt something in my stomach go cold in a way I don't really have words for, because that wasn't confusion, that was a decision. I went back down, slow, trying to think. I checked my phone, 1 bar, but 1 bar was enough. I called my buddy Reyes, another guy on the crew, lived maybe 15 minutes away in Church Hill. I kept my voice low, told him the address, and told him I need him to come knock on the front door right now, and I couldn't really explain over the phone, but the lady had locked me in the basement and wouldn't open up. He said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Give me 20. I hung up and I stood there in that basement with the bulb humming, and I looked around properly for the first time, and I noticed things I hadn't noticed when I came down. There were scratches on the inside of the door at the top of the stairs, down low, near the knob, not deep, just marks in the paint. Could have been anything, could have been a dog years ago, could have been her son as a kid. The bins along the wall, the one labeled photos was open, not by much, just an inch, and there were no photos in it. I could see from where I stood. It was empty. There was a folding chair against the far wall, past the furnace, that I hadn't clocked when I came down. Metal folding chair, the kind you'd bring up from a church basement, facing the stairs. I don't want to make this sound bigger than it is. I don't know what any of that stuff meant. Maybe nothing. Maybe she was just an old lady with a messy basement and a weird lock. But I stood there for those 20 minutes, and I did not sit down in that chair, and I did not touch anything else. And I kept my flashlight on, even with the bulb going. She didn't come back to the door the whole time. Not once. I listened. She moved around the kitchen a little, ran the sink again. At one point, I thought I heard her humming, but I couldn't swear to it. Then a car door outside. Reyes. He banged on the front door hard, the way you'd knock if you were a cop. I heard her go to the door immediately, not shuffle, go. Fast steps for someone her age. I couldn't hear what he said exactly, but I heard her voice, high and apologetic, and a little laughy. "Oh my goodness, honey, I didn't even hear him. That latch has been sticking for years. My son keeps saying he'll fix it." The deadbolt slid back. The door opened. Reyes was standing there, with his hand still up like he was about to knock again. She was behind him in the kitchen, with her hands folded at her waist, that same smile, glasses on the chain, cardigan buttoned to the top. She said, "I am so sorry, dear. I just didn't hear you knocking." I said it was fine. I went back down. I finished the coupling, tightened it, turned the water back on at the main, checked for drips, packed my bag. Reyes waited in the kitchen the whole time. I could hear them talking about the weather. She offered him a cookie. He said, "No, thank you." I wrote up the ticket at the kitchen table. She signed it. Her handwriting was steady. She thanked me twice and told me to have a blessed Christmas. I got in the van and I drove around the corner and parked and sat there for a while with the heat on. Monday morning, I told dispatch not to route me to that address anymore. She asked why. I said I just didn't want to go back. She wrote something in the notes, and that was that. I don't know what she was going to do. I don't know if she was going to do anything. Maybe she just wanted somebody in the house for an afternoon and figured a locked door would slow me down enough for that. Maybe it was something else. I don't need to know. I just need the drive home. It was August in Houston, which meant the mall was less a place to shop and more a place to not die of heat stroke. I was 7:10, killing an hour before my mom picked me up from the Galleria, and I sat down on one of those weird curved benches near the ice rink because my feet hurt and my iced coffee was mostly water at that point. That's when I noticed the phone. It was sitting on the bench next to me, screen down, in a clear case with a pressed flower inside. Nobody around, no bag, no jacket, no half-drunk drink next to it that would say someone just stepped away to the bathroom. I looked around for a full minute. There was a mom pushing a stroller past the Auntie Ains, two teenage boys arguing about shoes, an older man on the bench across from me scrolling something on his own phone. Nobody looked like they were missing anything. I picked it up. iPhone, older model, the back was scratched to hell. I figured I'd turn it into the security desk, but the closest one was on the other end of the mall by Macy's, and honestly, I wanted to see if I could find the owner myself. That felt easier than walking across an air-conditioned football field. I pressed the side button. The screen woke up. No password. It went straight to whatever app was open, which turned out to be Messages. I remember thinking, okay, I'll just check the contact name at the top, text the person he was last talking to, say, "Hi, I found your friend's phone." That was the plan. That was the entire plan. But you can't help reading. You just can't. Your eyes catch the last bubble on the screen before your brain has a chance to be polite about it. The last message was long. From him, or from whoever owned the phone, sent about 4 minutes before I picked it up. I'm not going to type the whole thing out. I don't want to, but it said, basically, that he was sorry, that he'd left the letter in the glove box, that he loved his sister, and to please tell her it wasn't her fault. None of it was, and that mom shouldn't come look. She should send someone else. He said he'd parked on the top level, so nobody would hear. He said he was okay now, actually. He said thank you. The person he was texting had written back 3 times. "Where are you? Please pick up. I'm calling your mom." Those 3 messages were unread. I want to say I moved fast, but I didn't. Not at first. I just stared at the screen. My iced coffee was sweating onto my leg, and I was aware of that. The cold, wet patch on my thigh in this really stupid, clear way, while my brain tried to catch up with what I was reading. The mall music was playing some acoustic cover of a song I used to like. A little kid was crying somewhere behind me because he wanted a pretzel, top level of the parking garage. That was what he said, top level. I have never in my life done anything as fast as what I did next, and also, it felt like I was moving through water. I opened the keypad on his phone and dialed 911. My hands were doing a weird shake I didn't know hands could do, like a vibration, not a tremble. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. I remember her voice was very calm and very level, and she asked me what my emergency was, and I just started talking. I said, I found a phone. I said, the person who owns it wrote a goodbye message. I said he's in his car on the top level of the parking garage at the Galleria in Houston. I don't know which side. I don't know what car. I'm sorry. I don't know his name. The phone doesn't have his name on it anywhere I can see. She asked me to stay on the line. She asked me to read her the message. I did. My voice sounded like somebody else's voice through my own head, kind of far away. She was typing while I talked. I could hear it. She told me units were already moving. She told me I did the right thing picking up the phone. She asked me to please stay exactly where I was. I sat down. I hadn't realized I'd stood up. Then I called my mom on my own phone because I suddenly needed her to know where I was, in case anything about this got weird, in case I had to go somewhere with police, in case anything at all. She picked up and I said, Mom, I'm okay, but something happened. I'm at the ice rink bench. Please come get me, but don't rush. She said she was already in the parking lot on the lower level. She said she'd walk in, and then I just sat there. I want to describe how long 20 minutes is when you are 17 and you are holding a stranger's phone and you don't know if the person on the other end of that phone is alive. It is not 20 minutes. It is a different unit of time entirely. The mall kept doing mall things. The pretzel kid got his pretzel. The two boys arguing about shoes left. A janitor pushed one of those yellow buckets past me and the wells squeaked. I kept looking at the phone in my lap like it was going to update me. It didn't. The battery was at 12%. A mall security guard walked up. Big guy, radio on his shoulder, sweating through his uniform even in the AC. He said, Ma'am, are you the young lady who found a phone? I nodded. I couldn't really talk yet. He said someone was looking for the owner, said HPD was on scene at the parking garage, said I should stay here, an officer was coming to talk to me. He was very polite about it. He kept saying ma'am. I think he could tell I was about to cry, and he was trying to give me something formal to hold on to. The officer who came got there right when my mom did. She came through the entrance in her work scrubs, and I have never been so glad to see anyone. The officer asked me to walk him through everything from the moment I sat down on the bench. I did. He wrote it in a little notebook, the actual paper kind. When I got to the part about the message, he stopped writing for a second and then started again. He told me they'd found him. Top level, west side, in a silver Corolla. He was alive. He said it just like that. He's alive, ma'am. You did good. I asked what happened. He said he couldn't get into a lot of the details, but that the young man was being taken to the hospital and that he was talking to the paramedics when they left. He said the letter was in the glove box, exactly where the message said it would be. He asked if he could keep the phone as part of the report. I gave it to him. It felt strange to let it go. I'd been holding it for over an hour by then. My hand was cramped from it. I don't know his name. I mean, I probably could have found out. It was in the local news for about half a day. No names, just a young man and a good Samaritan. The officer called our house once, a week later, to say thank you again on behalf of the family. My mom took the call. She didn't tell me what else he said. I didn't ask. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd walked to the security desk instead. If I'd handed the phone to somebody at Macy's who put it in a lost and found bin for the rest of the afternoon. That's the part I don't like to think about, but I do sometimes when I'm sitting on a bench somewhere and I see someone leave something behind. I always look now. I always check.